Ever get that feeling like something's just off? That nagging sense that maybe things aren't what they seem. Well, today, we're diving into a story that will take you down that very path. A case where a family fought tirelessly to uncover the truth behind a death that was initially ruled a suicide.
Oh, this is going to be a good one.
It is. It really is. We're going to be exploring the unsettling death of Megan Perah, a young mother whose case remained a mystery for 9 long years.
9 years, wow.
Yeah, 9 long years. Our deep dive today is based on a 48 hours episode. And let me tell you, it's a story that really gets under your skin.
I bet. Those 48 hours episodes always get me hooked.
Me too. We'll hear from Megan's family, law enforcement, and forensic experts as we peel back the layers of this incredibly complex case.
Sounds like a real roller coaster.
It is. So if you're looking for a story that'll make you question everything you think you know about justice and truth, buckle up and make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss a single detail of this deep dive.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this. A peaceful Saturday morning, shattered by a devastating discovery. Steve and Missy Dakota, Megan's parents, arrive at her house only to find her lying on the floor, barely clinging to life, a gun lying nearby.
Oh, that's just awful.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
Yeah,
The immediate assumption, a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
seems pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah, on the surface it did. But here's the thing. The initial scene appeared to be a clear-cut case of suicide. You have the gun, which belonged to Megan's husband, Dustin. There's a note on the counter, and all the doors are locked from the inside. No signs of forced entry.
So it seems like an open and shut case, right?
Right. But Steve and Missy, they weren't buying it. They knew their daughter. Megan was a vibrant young woman, a dedicated teacher working towards her master's degree.
She had her whole life ahead of her.
Exactly. And most importantly, she was a loving mother to 2 young boys. Suicide just didn't align with the Megan they knew and loved.
That's where that gut feeling comes in, right?
Absolutely. And it makes you think, how well can you ever really know someone?
It's a tough question.
It is. Because on paper, you have all this evidence pointing to suicide. But the family's perspective, their deep instinctive knowledge of Megan, told them something was terribly wrong.
It's like they say, mother knows best.
You got it. They just had this unshakable belief in their daughter's strength and her love for life. And even though the authorities seemed ready to close the case, Steve and Missy just couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story.
What was it about the scene that didn't sit right with them?
Well, as they started to look closer, certain details of the crime scene started to raise some red flags. For example, the gun itself, it was suspiciously clean, almost as if it had been wiped down.
Interesting.
And the note, while it did express love for her children, the handwriting style just didn't seem quite like Megan's.
Ah, I see. So these little inconsistencies started to chip away at the initial suicide theory.
Exactly. It's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle and you find a piece that looks like it should fit, but it just doesn't quite line up.
It makes you question the whole picture.
It does. And these inconsistencies fueled their determination to dig deeper, no matter how hard it would be.
It must have been incredibly difficult for them.
Oh, it was. For years, they pursued every avenue they could imagine. Independent research, consultations with different law enforcement agencies. They even sought the help of retired FBI agents.
Wow, they really weren't giving up.
Not a chance. Their commitment to uncovering the truth was remarkable, really a testament to the power of love and their belief in their daughter.
They faced so many obstacles, I'm sure.
They did. Countless obstacles, setbacks, and even resistance from the authorities who were convinced the case was closed. But still, they never gave up. I can't even imagine to have that kind of determination after going through so much.
I know, it's incredible. And their tenacity really paid off when they were finally able to get access to the original photos taken at the crime scene. The photos that had been kind of overlooked in the initial investigation.
It's amazing how sometimes a fresh pair of eyes can make all the difference.
Right. And these photos revealed a crucial piece of evidence that had been completely missed.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Tell me.
Okay, so the photos showed blood spatter on Dustin's shorts.
Okay.
And not just any blood spatter. This was the kind that's associated with a high-velocity impact, like a gunshot.
Oh, wow. So does that mean...
Here's the thing. The location of the blood spatter suggested that Dustin was way closer to Megan when the gun went off than he initially claimed.
That's a pretty big discrepancy.
It is. And it completely challenges the whole suicide theory.
It's like in those crime shows when they zoom in on some tiny detail and suddenly the whole case changes.
Exactly. It's incredible how these seemingly insignificant things can completely change the direction of an investigation.
I know. It's like those tiny drops of blood held the key to the truth.
But if the evidence was starting to point away from suicide, why was the initial investigation so quick to reach that conclusion?
Well, there are a few factors at play, it seems. First, the first officer on the scene, he was so focused on trying to save Megan's life that he may have, without realizing it, contaminated the scene.
Oh, no.
Yeah. He even admitted later that he hadn't taken all the precautions necessary to preserve the crime scene.
It makes you wonder how many other cases could have been compromised by similar oversights.
You're right. It really highlights the importance of proper protocols and training for everyone involved in an investigation.
For sure.
And then you have the detective initially assigned to the case. He was a fairly young officer, pretty inexperienced at the time.
Oh.
Yeah. And even he acknowledged that with the knowledge and training he has now, he would have handled things very differently.
Experience really does make a difference.
Absolutely. In this case, for example, the gun was never even tested for fingerprints. Witness statements weren't thoroughly investigated. And some key pieces of evidence, like Megan's cell phone, were never even examined.
It just shows that sometimes even the most basic steps can be overlooked.
It happens. It's about knowing what to look for, what questions to ask, and how to connect those little details.
It's like that saying, the devil's in the details.
Exactly. And in this case, those details were crucial.
So, despite all these setbacks, the Dakotas and the retired FBI agents continued to push for answers. And they knew they needed to get an interview with Dustin.
I bet that wasn't easy.
It wasn't. But it was a pivotal moment in the case. It allowed investigators to really observe Dustin, see how he reacted to specific questions, and analyze his behavior under pressure.
Did he crack under pressure?
Well, during the interview, Dustin maintained his innocence. But there were some inconsistencies in his story that raised eyebrows.
Like what?
Well, for one, he claimed that Megan had been depressed and preoccupied with death in the weeks leading up to her death. But her family completely denied that.
So right away you have conflicting accounts.
Exactly. And when you have conflicting accounts, it's crucial to verify information and look for any evidence that supports or contradicts those claims.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but instead of visual pieces, you're dealing with statements and timelines.
Right. And if the pieces don't fit, something's off.
And in this case, the family's denial of Dustin's claims about Megan's mental state really cast doubt on his story.
Then there was the issue of Dustin's alibi. He said he was at Walmart getting a prescription filled when the gunshot happened.
Okay.
But when investigators looked at the timeline based on his receipt and a neighbor's statement, things just didn't add up.
Ah, the timeline's off. That's never good.
Never good. And then there was Dustin's description of what happened when he got home. He said he slipped in Megan's blood, claimed it was an accident.
I bet the investigators weren't buying that.
They weren't. They saw it as a possible attempt to contaminate the crime scene.
It's a classic move, right? Try to muddy the waters.
It is. And it makes it that much harder to figure out what really happened.
So did all this new evidence lead anywhere?
It did. The case was finally brought before a grand jury.
And
The grand jury indicted Dustin on a charge of second-degree murder.
wow. Finally, some justice for Megan and her family.
It was. It felt like a huge victory after all those years of fighting. But as often happens in these complex legal cases, there's another twist in the story.
There's always a twist, isn't there?
Right. So get this, just days before the trial was set to begin, Dustin's attorney offered a plea deal. Negligent homicide.
Oh, wow. So instead of facing a trial for murder, he had the option to plead guilty to a lesser charge.
Exactly. Plea deals are pretty common. They can help speed things up and avoid all the uncertainty of a trial, but they can be controversial too.
Especially when the victim's family might feel like it's not enough.
You got it. And that's exactly how the Dakota family felt. They were really hesitant to accept this deal. They wanted Dustin to be held fully accountable for Megan's death.
I can understand that.
Yeah, it's a tough decision to make.
Yeah.
But they ultimately agreed to the plea deal, but with one condition.
What was that?
Dustin had to answer some very specific questions under oath.
Ah, so they were trying to get him to admit to certain facts, even if the charge itself wasn't what they wanted.
Exactly. It was like they were trying to get as much truth as they could, even within the limits of this plea deal.
Right.
They needed to make sure that Megan's death wasn't just brushed aside as some tragic accident.
That makes sense.
And during that hearing, Dustin admitted under oath that he and Megan had been arguing, that he had a gun in his hand, and that during the struggle, the gun went off, fatally wounding Megan.
Wow. Those admissions must have been a powerful moment for the Dakotas.
I bet it was like, finally, some of their suspicions were being confirmed. It wasn't the full justice they were hoping for, but it was a step towards acknowledging the truth of what happened to Megan.
It shows that even when a trial doesn't happen, there can still be a search for the truth and some sense of accountability.
But the Dakota family's fight wasn't over. Remember, Dustin and Megan had 2 young sons, and for almost 9 years, Dustin had full custody of them.
Oh, right. That's another layer of heartbreak in this whole story.
It is. So, driven by their love for their grandsons and wanting to honor Megan's memory, they were determined to bring those boys home.
It's amazing how, even after everything they'd been through, they still had the strength to fight for their grandsons.
I know, their resilience is incredible.
And did they succeed?
They did. After a long legal battle, the Dakota family was granted full custody of their grandsons.
That's amazing. A little bit of light in such a dark story.
It is, and it's a testament to their perseverance and the power of love, even in the face of such a tremendous loss.
It gives me chills. So what are we left with at the end of this deep dive?
It's a case that really stays with you,
Hmm.
with all the twists and turns. It makes you think about the justice system, the importance of a thorough investigation, and just the immense power of a family's love. It also reminds you that sometimes the most obvious answers aren't the right ones, and that questioning those initial assumptions can be so important.
Definitely. It makes you wonder what it would take for you to challenge something that seems already decided, you know?
Yeah.
How far would you go to fight for someone you love?
Big questions. And that's what we're all about here on the Deep Dive. We take these complex stories, look at them from every angle, and hopefully leave you with something to think about.
I'm still thinking about this one. And if you found this deep dive as gripping as we did, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on our future episodes.
We've got some incredible stories lined up, and we can't wait to share them with you.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep digging for the truth, and most importantly, stay curious.
We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.